passage important? Why is the coherence of the passage important, or understanding the overall architecture of a surah important? There's several reasons. I'm most impacted by Hamiduddin Farahi's work on this. Brilliant scholar. Basically arguing that in any speech, like if I was giving a talk or we're having a conversation or somebody's literally giving a presentation, if you take one or two lines out of that presentation and just kind of cite it and make conclusions out of it, the problem is you lost context, right? You don't know what was said before, what was said after, what was this a part of, was this building up to something? And now as a result, you can draw some very different conclusions than the ones that are meant by the speaker. Even though the Quran is protected speech, right? Allah, like, you can take one ayah and draw many benefits from it, etc. But really a holistic approach to the text, like, what is the entire surah about? What is this particular ayah doing in this surah? Why is this example mentioned? Why is this part of the story mentioned? When you understand the overall architecture of the surah, its placement helps you understand the larger point that's being made, right? That's one really important element. The other really interesting important element is that it allows you to understand that, you know how in a speech sometimes you're listening and you're wondering, where's the speaker going with this? And then a few minutes later, he makes a point, you're like, oh, it all ties together now, right? That tie-in was actually a huge part of the eloquence of the speech. Okay. If you just heard part one and you gave no mind to part two, or you just heard part two and gave no mind to part one, like somebody walking in late on a khutbah or something, they won't know how things were put together, you know? And that's kind of what is lost also in the study of a surah sometimes, when we don't know how, like, this certain point that was being made was actually a build-up to something that was mentally being developed ahead of time, right? So it enhances our thinking and appreciation of the text dramatically. It also, to me, a third element of why the structure of a surah is important, of the many, is that associations. Like, you know, for instance, I'll say, well, I'm pretty sure that this first passage has a lot of parallels with the last passage. Now what that does is, when I study that last passage, it's going to be studied in light of what is stated in the first passage. It's going to bring new things to light because of the associations now that I'm making. Associations that otherwise I wouldn't have even thought about, right? So as a result of that, our study of the Quran becomes far more multidimensional. It becomes a lot deeper, a lot more comprehensive. And the other thing that really happens from a social point of view, not just a steady academic point of view, from a social point of view, is that then drawing crazy conclusions out of the Quran that don't even respect its own context becomes very difficult, right? Okay. And so you can clearly call out like an interpretation of an ayah that is so off the wall that just doesn't have anything to do with the surah itself. Like, why would this entire surah be making point A, and then you drew Z out of it? Like, you won't be able to make that jump. It would be much harder to justify that jump. So a disassociated study of the Quran, gives room for that for people, right? They just kind of pull one thing out and just kind of start quoting it and, you know, drawing conclusions from it. So those are some of the advantages of, like, studying it comprehensively. And of course, to me personally, more than anything else, on the one hand is proper understanding. Finally, there's appreciation. Man, do you appreciate divine order? Like it's heavenly. What a thing of beauty, you know? So those are just some things to bear in mind when studying and appreciating Nazm of the Quran.